it's because the government has become so abusive and so blatant with what they do that it leaves them with no other choice but to do that. And in America, I think it's different because there are so many ways in which we're pacified, in which we're placated, either with entertainment or sports. Not to hate on football, because then we'll have a riot in here. But just in that fashion, that there are so many things that we're pacified with and talked down with that it's almost as if the government's designed to try and make us feel enough indignation where they can get away with whatever they want to, but not push us so far that it becomes impossible for us to broker it in our heads that we have to go back to living under their system of rule.
You talk about economic imperialism, and Latin America is one of those places which distinguish.
If you're funding people to go somewhere else and to overthrow democratically elected regimes and to spread propaganda and to commit political murder, then that in essence is terrorism. But I think that the difference is that we don't consider that terrorism in the same way we don't consider when we put sanctions on a third world country terrorism. In other words, all the sanctions we put on, all the embargo we've had on Cuba, I always remind my Cuban brothers and sisters that Fidel Castro has never missed a meal because of that. Neither has his brother. Neither has anybody in the Politburo. They've never lost a pound off that shit. They've never even become a little bit, it's their people that have suffered the most. And maybe that's the whole point, that they want to make the people suffer enough that they blame the leaders. But the power structure is organized in such an efficient way that it makes them blame them instead. I think that in terms of having a cause for Latin Americans to rebel, I think that the United States has created a very, very angry sentiment over not just Iraq, but its mishandling of the war on terror, its labeling of everyone that doesn't agree with its political policy as a terrorist organization or as a communist organization. I think that Latin Americans, because we're very prideful people, we feel angry when people try to label us. And that I think in terms of retaliation, I think it's already going on. I think they're already voting out people that are sympathetic.
The revolution, the real revolution, will only come from the masses. Now, even here in this room, yeah, as we sit here talking about revolution, all of us are responsible for the oppression of the people that are in all around the world. All of us are responsible for it, yeah, and especially those of us who are sitting here in SOAS. I'm a student here as well, SOAS. This has got prestige around the world. This school was set up to train colonial administrators to go around the world and oppress people. We talk about African countries, these are African colonies. We talk about African leaders, these are colonial administrators or mercenaries at best. Do you understand what I'm saying, man? Really, it's the whole rhetoric with which we're engaging in these discussions. We have to call a shovel and a spade a spade. You know what I mean? There's criminals that, even if you look at the laws that are drawn up now, if the people, if the masses of the people even implemented the laws that are on the statutes right now, the positions of these governments, of these Western governments, are untenable, yeah, because they don't adhere to their own legislations, their own rules, yeah. And so, and this whole democracy, we say democracy is majority rule. So if you're part of the 49%, yeah, that didn't get your way, then in your words, life will be fucked. Do you know what I mean? Pretty much. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I just want you to kind of respond on some of, well, any of those kind of things.
I don't think I need to respond because I think you asked like 10 questions and you answered like 11 of them. I get what you're saying, man.
So we're getting to radio,
I think, in other words, there are too many people behind the scenes who I think specifically keep themselves out of the limelight because it's better to be the king's advisor and be the person that counts the money for the king than to be the king himself, than to bear that responsibility. In other words, if you're getting if you get to go to a supermarket every single day, right, or every week, and you get to shop there, and you never have to pay for anything, and you're never required to stand in line, you walk in the supermarket, you take whatever the fuck you want, and then you walk out at your leisure. Does that supermarket have to have your name on it? Do you care if it says Technique Supermarket? It doesn't fucking matter what the name of the supermarket is. It doesn't matter what its color of the awning is. It doesn't matter how you want to present it as a business. It's still entirely subservient to whatever you say. And I think that's the situation that we're facing when we talk about large corporations. They don't have a desire sometimes to have their name attached to something, so they have their parent company create another subsidiary or something else to govern specific aspects of it. And then when it comes time to hand out the blame, they don't accept any of the blame. They don't see themselves at fault for anything that happened. And that's why I'm saying, and that's another reason to tie your question into music and hip-hop, to get back to the fact because I'm a rapper, you know, that we decided to talk about and create this album called The Third World, because I feel like there are certain communities in America and in Europe that have the benefit of being able to have a connection with where they come from. They have a benefit of having a close connection with their home country, and because we don't, we see that as an alienated struggle. We don't see that as a part of who we are, nor do we think that that affects us when it really does. And I think that when we change our mind about that, then we're more willing to confront those specific things that happen to us, and I would say more capable of addressing those things because we're educated about who's directly responsible for it.
You speak a lot about revolution, but do you think a revolution in the Middle East is even possible? Because when you think about it, we were screwed over a long time ago, ever since the Middle East was split up into different countries, and the people themselves are not aware, the people themselves are ignorant. When you look at a country like Jordan, 80% of the people are in poverty, and the 20% that isn't is blinded and ignorant and doesn't know what's happening around them in the world. Like, a small minority actually knows. But the other 20% is blinded by the money and blinded into ignorant nationalism. So basically, how could a revolution even happen when the people themselves aren't aware, the people themselves aren't helping themselves? Even in Palestine, where people are going through so much trouble, lots of our Arabic brothers sold us a long time ago, and most of the aid that so many people have been working for around the world, many students, many organizations, does not get to the people. It goes to the corrupt governments. The governments are way too corrupt. It's past that point. So what could really be done?
Well, I mean, to talk about it, I think that we need to dispel the idea that Jordan is anything more than a monarchy. And a monarchy is the most controlled form of oligarchy, the most concentrated form. I know people resent that, and I know that because I've talked to Jordanians, musicians or artisans, or people from the journalism field that actually come from Jordan. And whenever I say it's a monarchy, they always stop and correct me. They're like, no, it's a constitutional monarchy. And I think that is like me saying, well, no, he didn't rape her, he just date raped her. You know what I mean? It ain't like he beat her over the head with a brick and did some fucked up shit to her, but he cornered her in her dorm room and did some fucked up shit to her. It's the same exact thing. There's no, to me, there are some ways to dress it up, but in the same measure, I think that when we begin to define and understand how these politics work, it leads us to thinking, all right, if these people are making money and they were brokered a deal to put them in power in the first place, then where is the compensation of it all going? And how does it get paid back? In other words, how does the kickback come to them? We know that payola is illegal to give to radio stations now, and yet artists are always willing to do free shows for the radio station because they know that it brings to 2,000 people who paid $25 a head to get in, and they are willing to say, hey, I don't want any of that money, you guys can keep it for your posterity or whatever the fuck, but that helps their records be played all of a sudden. So, in other words, we need to follow that paper trail from where all the money is being invested. And we need to say to ourselves as a people, if we are going to conduct a revolution, that what are the, not what are the weak points of a quasi-fascist administration or of a monarchy, but what are the strong points? Because you never defeat an enemy by just attacking his weak points. You can only defeat an enemy by making his strong points his weak points. That's how you defeat someone. That is how you knock them completely off their feet. And what are the strong points of a monarchy?